Hi, welcome to Police the Police podcast, and this is episode 2. Just a reminder that we've made these podcasts in the hopes that people who don't think police brutality is an issue or who don't think that police brutality is racially motivated. We hope this makes you, the viewer, come with us into an open mind and will listen in the possibility of having your mind changed. So I'm one of the speakers today. My name is Brian.
And I will be joining Brian as we talk about police brutality, and my name is Rivers. In our last episode, we defined police brutality and discussed why it is immoral and illegal. And if you didn't watch that last episode, we suggest that you go ahead and do that.
So to start, how do we know that police brutality is an issue? Many people think it's wrong and think it's unfortunate when it happens, but it shouldn't be a priority.
We will look at how widespread the issue of police brutality is, especially compared to other countries, and we will look at the impacts that it has on America as a whole. It is extremely difficult to find statistics regarding police violence that does not result in death, and this is because there is no database or obligation for police to record every single instance of police violence, and oftentimes violence is covered up. Going off deaths alone, this picture is pretty grim. Police brutality does not just impact criminals or dangerous people. 58% of killings by police in 2020 were traffic stops, and police responses to mental health crisis or situations where the police was not reportedly, while the person was not reportedly threatening anyone with a gun.
Police kill multiple people nearly every day in the U.S. According to this 2020 police violence report, which compiles police brutality data from multiple databases, it found that the majority of police killings in 2020 were in response to non-violent offenders or in instances where no crime was reported. It also found police consider a vehicle as a weapon in many cases, giving them an excuse to fire upon citizens. Police also consider a knife to be a deadly weapon, with almost 200 victims in 2020 being killed due to being armed with a knife, and almost 70 people being killed due to being armed with a car. And one of the final points I have is that as of May 2021, police have killed over 350 people this year. In 2020, almost 1,200 people were killed. There was only 3 days in the entire year of 2020 in which police did not kill someone. Again, this doesn't include other instances of violence, just death. Compared to other wealthy democracies,
That's okay. So compared to other wealthy democracies, the United States has significantly more police violence. And in 2019, police killed 1,099 people in the US. And when looking at wealthy democracies, Canada has the second highest rate of police violence behind the US. And police in Canada killed 36 people in 2019. This is with a similar mode of government and similar crime rate to the United States. And most wealthy democracies have less than 10 or even 0 deaths at the hands of police each year.
The US had over 1,100 police deaths in 2020. We are right below Syria, a government that Americans tend to label as quite oppressive. There was about 1,500 police deaths in Syria in 2020. Other countries that Americans often label oppressive had significantly less deaths than the US. Racist narratives often label Middle Eastern and Asian governments as extremely oppressive, especially in US propaganda. However, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and Hong Kong all reported less than half the amount of police deaths in 2020 compared to the US.
And many protest tactics used by the American police during Black Lives Matter protests are similar or even the same as tactics used by police during the Hong Kong protests in China.
Police use similar methods of chemical and psychological warfare in both instances. In fact, many protesters in the US look to Hong Kong protests for inspiration as to how to protect themselves from police attacks.
These weapons are outlawed for use in most countries, and chemical weapons such as tear gas were actually made illegal to use globally during war by the Geneva Convention. If it's illegal to use these weapons internationally during wartime, why are we so accepting of our own police using it against civilians? And tear gas is an abortifacient, meaning that it directly leads to abortions. Multiple pregnant women, including women who weren't even at protests were tear gassed during the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests. Now, these statistics don't even show the full extent of the problem because many more police killings go unreported and unpublicized, and not every police department requires brutality to be reported. Also, these statistics only include deaths, not including injuries and rape committed by cops. So now we're going to go into the negative consequences of police brutality on America and how it affects our society.
So in the context of law and order, how do we view justice in America? Well, a Gallup poll found that the majority of American adults have distrust for the police. Trust in the police is at an all-time low in the United States. Only 11% of Black Americans and 23% of white Americans have full confidence in the justice system. A study from the Flinders University in Australia found that the public's trust in the police is highly linked to effectiveness of laws, enforcement, and regulation. This means that lower public trust in the police leads to less cooperation with the law and therefore decreases law and order overall.
And also going into spending, the cost of police brutality is high. Where does this money come from and what is it being spent on? Well, in 2019, the New York City alone spent $175 million settling lawsuits regarding wrongful death or unnecessary use of force by police. It is estimated that just the 3 largest cities in America have spent approximately $3 billion within the last decade settling lawsuits related to police brutality. This money is coming from taxpayers and could be used in a variety of ways to help the police force improve and many other ways as well. And less than 1% of police officers are punished when they commit brutality, meaning that some officers have spent taxpayer money on multiple lawsuits. Now, protests are quite expensive to clean up after, but regardless of what one thinks about protests, they are a First Amendment right and would likely not be happening at all if brutality was punished or if there was significant justice in place.
Because of the events started by police brutal forces, many people have been traumatized. Loss of loved ones, personal accounts of being harmed by the police, and much, much more.
Now, have either of us lost trust in the police? How so? And how do you feel when police are around?
Well, I've only had one instance with the police, and it was actually a positive instance, but I was very anxious the entire time.
Yeah, I agree. I think any instance that I've had with the police has been pretty positive, but I also would like to recognize my privilege in that, being I am a white woman in America, and that my apprehension and mistrust of the police often comes to viewing how it has affected people of color and their communities. So I think any mistrust that I have or nervousness or anxiety related to the police comes from viewing what has been done to others.
Oh, and I totally agree too. As a white male, I have a lot more privilege than a lot others have in this country. And a lot of my trust has just been deteriorated from witnessing the horrible events across this country and from the institution of policing.
Yeah. And, you know, concluding this episode, we want to recognize and validate people of color and their experiences with the police. We see you, we hear you, and we hope that our efforts of educating others comes to bring some more understanding on the topic of police brutality.
Make sure to check out our next episode, episode 3, where we are going to be discussing the racist history of the police and the criminal justice system.
Thank you for listening.